there's this dopamine rush, and you think, I want to see it, I want to grab it, I want to touch it.
Oh my God.
I want to grab it.
I want to just bury my face in it.
He got a little Randy Savage there. Ooh, yeah. Hey, everybody, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Eddie.
And we're here with Church Reacts. Eddie, what do you get when you've seen porn 3 times in your life, but you still don't know what funky sex is?
A pre-decision. That'll make sense later.
The first time I saw pornography, I was
Right
in
out of the gate.
5th grade. I was over at my buddy Steven's house.
Deep into the camera, those eyes were
His dad's
piercing.
Stash of Playboy magazines, probably 75 or so of them, in
Nice.
a big trunk.
Nice. I wonder if
And
is he going to
Steven and
describe
I,
them in
5th
great detail?
grade,
Why is there a picture of him as a child up
I
there?
know,
Is he
it's
talking about
very weird.
pornography?
Pictures.
Weird.
The second time I saw pornography,
Was 30 minutes later.
and I was babysitting for a couple, and in the living room, they had Playboy magazines sitting out on the coffee table. The third time I saw pornography, I was in the 10th grade.
I don't know why he's posting pictures of
Until the
himself.
guilt kind
Oh,
of
this
overcame me,
is
and I
emotional
really
manipulation. He
went
wants you to associate these are the
really,
victims of
really
pornography.
hard.
This is the boy
I
who saw
remember
boobs.
Yep.
As a 5th grader, I remember the rush, the thrill.
Sounds like he still remembers it.
Seeing something that was
Seeing
forbidden,
those
and yet
naked
something
bodies.
that I wanted to see.
Seen that hot
The
flesh.
second thing I remember, over 4 decades later, I could actually recall some of those images that I saw.
Humble
As I
brag
remember
there.
the confusion. I
He wanted
remember
a
the
little gasp.
simultaneous
Like that's
excitement.
so,
I can remember the first
Now,
porn
back
video I
then,
saw. I can
pornography
remember
was
it.
really difficult
It's definitely
to come
burned into my neurons.
by. Today,
I can
as you
recall
know,
it right
you
now
give your 12-year-old
I'm
in vivid detail.
a
yeah.
mobile device.
I remember
And
watching it and being like,
essentially,
"You
you're
can
giving
do
your
that?"
kid porn in their pocket. Why did I say 12-year-old? Because according
Why
to
did you?
Common Sense Media, 12 is the average age that a child will see pornography for the first time.
And God willing, we'll get that number much
Unfortunately,
lower.
that pattern sticks with a lot of people. If you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable now, going, I should have skipped this week at church. You're
It's every
not
week.
alone, because studies show about 69% of men.
Nice.
Nice.
40% of women will view porn this year in the U.S.
That seems low to me.
That seems low.
So
Is this
bad
like
news
people at
is,
church that
chances
responded
are
to
Yeah,
a
yeah.
survey? This is
Are
like
you gonna-
69% of churchgoers.
You gonna check
admit
out
it.
porn this year?
Yeah.
Something
I don't know.
must
Probably
really-
not.
Do you? I'm
Our
gonna
God
I'm gonna
is
pause it for
faithful.
this because I'd hate to miss this. Do you think he ever actually says the word masturbation
In this entire sermon?
In this sermon, over under one time.
I don't know.
If he'll actually say the word,
I don't think so.
you don't think? Yeah,
'Cause I-
they like to talk. It's like a lust and like a very like broad
Lust and pornography
you
and
know.
the sensations and the sinful. But I think
But they don't like to get into the actual thing.
I know I had a friend. He got in trouble for saying the word vulva.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in a sermon. He was doing a sermon, and
Why? Because people don't like the cars.
it was. You could drive a Volvo through that vulva. It was about the birth of Jesus. It was the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, giving birth, and her vulva was involved, which it normally is in childbirth. And so he read from this passage. It was this passage that was supposed to take it like real to life, like we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And so he read it, and he got, I think he got a demerit, whatever you call it in the church,
The
like
church.
you know, disciplined for it.
I was going to try to think of a Harry Potter term just to be stupid, but I can't.
Harry, did you put the vulva in the goblet of fire?
So over under one
So
time.
I think so. What
it says
my
the word
point
masturbation.
is, yeah, my point is, if you can't say vulva, I don't
Yeah.
think you can say masturbation.
No matter how you are tempted,
Tempted to what, sir?
I wanna
Tempted to
show
what?
you,
He's gonna get so
Scripture says,
close.
1 Corinthians
He's
chapter
gonna get
10,
so
verse
close.
13.
So close to saying
Almost
the word.
there. He's gonna edge his way to saying masturbation.
What are biblical ways to say masturbation? Or things that you could say in church?
Even Jesus was tempted.
Yeah, Jesus was tempted with bread, though. I think he was.
Yeah, I was like, is
very
he
hungry.
insinuating that Jesus was tempted to look at porn.
I mean, Jesus hadn't eaten for 40 days. If I haven't had sex for 40 days, unbearable.
I came to bring some good news that God is going to give some of you a way out to find freedom by the power
Some
of
of you.
Jesus. We're talking about quitting
Not all
porn,
of you.
and the title of
Oh, I
today's
thought it
message
said
is
squirting porn for a
Escaping
second.
the Porn Trap.
I really did.
Now
God,
we're
thank
going
you
to
so
pray.
much.
I'm trying to think of like
Goodness
really
to Him.
goofy church ways to say
always give us a way
masturbation.
out.
Yeah. He can't say like stroking it or
So, God,
jacking
I-
off,
Yeah.
right? He can't rub one out. He's not going to say that.
It would be something silly like lifting the robe,
That you would set
Exposing his feet. That's from Ruth.
exposing his feet.
because we
When the
know
book of Ruth
truth
exposed
sets us free.
Boaz's
Pray
feet,
this in the name of
she took his
Jesus, and
penis out.
everybody
That's what it
said?
means. So.
And well, we are in a message series called Think Ahead, based on an idea of a book that I recently published.
Oh,
All the
congrats.
content we're covering in the weekends is different from what's in the book. And on the weekends,
We were
we're
talking
looking
about
at
the humble
6
brag thing
different
earlier. This
Yeah.
people
is
from
based
the
on
Bible,
a book
and we're
written
gonna see
by
how they
a
would
humble
think
author.
ahead and make some pre-decisions to decide ahead of time to do what's right.
I
to
grew
honor
up-
God.
Preachers
Today,
wore
the
suits.
person we're going to look at is Job
They may have
the
been
Old
from
Testament.
J.C.
Now,
Penney, but they were
whenever we think
suits.
about
He's
Job,
got
what do you tend
the
to think
kind of
about?
Steve Jobs.
We've got
Think about
Under
the guy who
Armour.
suffered, right?
Yeah, Under
We've got
Armour.
the
When you think about Job, you
distressed,
think about,
cool
oh
stuff.
my
We've got
gosh, he went
the
through so
fairly,
much, and he
it's a
did.
dad sweater, but
there's
it's
a lot
not.
more to his story
It's not a
than you may
Cosby
not
sweater.
realize. He was a very, very successful man. He had integrity. He was God honoring. The devil attacked his possessions, his family, and his health. Some
But
of you
Job
got
never
friends that
jerked
you're glad
off.
you have, and you got some other friends going, I think
I
got
promise you
enough
that.
for you.
Now I don't know if you know this,
Job
Eddie, but the
kinda
book of
listened to it
Job
for a
is
while, but
considered
after
the
a while,
first
the
book
very
ever
first,
written.
yeah.
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 And in
Which
Job
makes sense. It's kind of a
31,
very,
he
it's a
offered
very simple
very
narrative
real
of why do bad
defense
things happen to good people.
against the
That's it. Why does
accusations
evil stuff
toward-
happen?
But the first thing that Job mentions is a promise that he made to God. The first thing he said is, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look with lust at a young woman.
But old women, oh,
We
Job's
can't be
into
sure.
grannies.
But in the 10th grade, when I threw those magazines away, I said, God, please help me not look again.
Did he?
So, Job
Did he?
leads with
When was the fourth
desire,
time you
this
saw
promise to
pornography,
God not to
sir?
look
This
lustfully.
morning, getting
And as
ready
you
for this
read
sermon.
his
When was
words,
the
he is
500th
God,
time?
That you may be able to hide your lust from other people, but you can't hide your lust from God.
He reads all
He
your
knows
thoughts.
about
He
it.
knows.
Oh,
He
yeah.
knows
still
the search
loves you.
history.
All your dirty
And
thoughts.
He promises to give you a way out.
Still has not
What's the
said
big deal
the
if
M
I have
word.
some lustful
Nope.
thoughts? Job said, for lust is a shameful sin. It's a fire that burns all the way to hell. He said, if I gave into my lustful desires, it would wipe out everything that I own.
Job sounds like a sex addict.
Job's got a problem.
Like, look, I like sex as much as the next guy, I think. I don't think it would ruin my life.
He decided to think ahead.
A
And I want to
pre-decision,
encourage
just
you
like
for a
in my
moment
book.
to do the very same. Left unchecked, what
Whoa.
could your sexual sin cost you?
50% of all
If
assets.
you give in and continue to let that fire burn out of control,
This is like
I've
elevating
thought,
a normal
because
thing
if
to
I
like a
compromise
very
my
high
integrity in
thing.
this
Oh,
way,
well,
Making
yeah.
it like-
yeah. I mean, the elevation of sex as one of the most
lose
critical,
your-
foundational
which is very,
pieces
very
of what
important
your
to me.
spiritual life should be about.
Your
Sexuality is
past.
just so exploitable.
Yes.
It gets to some of the most
If I
vulnerable parts of ourselves. It's
sinned
something we want. It's a
sexually,
connection we want.
I would crush
And religion has
so
just
many
done,
people.
especially the Christian faith, has done such
I
a
would lose the
fantastic
respect of
job
my children and
of
my-
really manipulating that space, making
Yeah.
you feel like you have so much to answer for
Yeah.
based on these urges or based on, what you want to do with yourself. And that vulnerability to just be able to manipulate and exploit that in people. I mean, that's pretty historical.
Well, and it's funny because again, he still hasn't said exactly what he's talking about, whether it's masturbation or adultery or whatever else it could be.
Right. What
But-
actual act?
Yeah, and he still hasn't even. It's just kind of in general like sexual sin.
Yeah.
He did put like a blot on himself right there while you were talking, where he said, "If I were to sin sexually, it would crush so many people."
Just knock on the door. If the door is closed and he's behind it, just knock first.
The worst part is I would betray my vows to my very best friend.
Did
for
he
me
say
for
he was never going to masturbate in his
33, almost
vows?
34 years, and I would
That is
crush
weird.
5 minutes.
To have and to
of
hold.
sexual
5
sin.
minutes of sexual sin. Superman, this guy.
Story of serving
5 minutes?
I'm
Minutes?
I'm still trying to imagine the vows that talk about masturbation.
sexual vulnerability. He started with lust, which leads me to believe he was
He was a
thinking
sex
ahead
addict.
and pre-decided.
Pre-decided.
What I like about it is
Pre-decided.
started
He was
there and didn't
premature
hide it. He didn't say,
with his
"Oh,
decision
yeah, this isn't a problem
sexually."
for me." I pre-decided. I chose to make a covenant with God.
Pre-decided
not to
count.
Look, the devil has a strategy to take every single one of you down.
By showing you titties. The devil's gonna show you boobies.
Alone tell us that a lot of us are very vulnerable to this temptation.
He's not gonna say it.
He's not gonna say it.
He's not gonna say it.
The first thing
devil's
that
temptation
happens in
cycle.
some
The devil's
area of
gonna
life is
tempt
you
you
are
to stroke
triggered
one out.
that,
To shoot ropes.
arouses you. It's an attractive person at the gym. Well, praise the Lord for his muscles. Oh, thank you for
His
her
muscles.
yoga pants. Or you watch some raunchy show on HBO.
I think the raunchy show he was talking about was Euphoria.
This is Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Reading some kind of a novel, and you come to that steamy part in the novel where they do whatever they do.
You know they give it out an award.
Whatever they do.
You know they give it out an award every
You're
year
home
for the worst
alone.
written sex scene.
You're
Do they
angry.
really?
I'd like to win that award
and you're
one day.
bored, and your mind wanders and you're triggered. You see something that excites you, and this trigger can cause a powerful physiological reaction in your body. There's this dopamine rush, and you think, I want to see it, I want to grab it, I want to touch it.
Oh my god.
I want to grab it.
I want to just bury
He got
my
a
face
little,
in it.
he got a little Randy Savage there.
I'm gonna do that
shake
either.
it all
I'm
over
gonna-
myself.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm gonna see it, I'm gonna grab it, I'm gonna touch it. Just put your hands behind your back, preacher, just leave them right there, right?
What?
You know, you're excited.
I don't know what we just watched.
Ah, I feel really violated.
Everyone thought it was very funny,
to
though.
rationalize. If you do not break the cycle, the next thing that happens is this: trigger, desire, rationalize.
Jerk off. Oh,
If you don't intentionally
no, act out.
stop
Act
the
out.
cycle, then you will act out. You'll click on the website. You'll watch.
Hey,
the
I'm gonna
video,
have this little
you'll
PowerPoint.
ask her to send the
Should I
new
put
photo,
masturbate up there?
Wait.
Masturbate.
He did it. We got it. We got the.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's okay, so we're at one.
The cycle, you experience the wave of
The wave of shame. I mean, that's universal
Especially
though.
if you're- But after you sin, the devil maximizes it. Tells you God wouldn't love you, and you'll never have a good marriage, and you're pathetic, and you're disgusting.
Oh man.
And it
Bud.
can be rather confusing to you. And then there's another part that feels equally or even more ashamed.
I mean, I do remember feeling this way
Now, if you're a
constantly.
Christian,
Because they told us to
Because they
feel
told
that
you
way.
to, though. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like because you
Anyway.
told me to feel that way.
gotta- can you
It's
keep
like
it-
that meme, the hot dog guy. Like we're all looking for the person who did this.
delete your history, and you erase whatever.
This is all
and
very
you try to
specific.
come up with some. Then you're going through life with what some people have described to me as like a ball and chain.
What
God,
some people
and trying to have a good
describe.
marriage,
They told me it's like
purity,
this. I wouldn't
but
know.
there's this weight that holds you back and slows you down. When is it
Ties
gonna
you
come
up
out?
and
When is it
cracks
gonna
you
come
with
out?
whips.
And then you ask God to help you. And you might actually stop for a little while. You might have a short period of what we might call sexual
9 months in
sobriety.
freshman year of high school for me. That was my record.
I remember in youth group, we had like accountability, and they would always refer to it as slipped up,
I might as well just do it again.
which sounds dirtier than just saying masturbated.
slip?
It's like I slipped up this week.
I slipped.
What you tend to think is,
It was slippery.
I hope when I get married, this is gonna go away. I'm gonna be married, and I can, honeymoon for the next 73 years.
Bringing
You think
it
when
out.
You're married, the temptation's gonna go away because you don't just have a lust problem. You're stuck in the devil's.
Devil's
Devil's
sin and cycle.
The devil's laundromat.
What do we do?
Tumble me dry low.
Job gives us a really good example to think ahead.
To pre-decide.
Job, you can almost
How does he
hear
do
his
this
thought
whole thing
process.
with a
If I'm
straight
going
face?
to
How
be
does he do it?
vulnerable, I'm going to think ahead. I'm going to pre-decide to make a covenant with my eyes. The first thing is I'm going to encourage you, don't just fight temptation, but flee from it.
Take off.
Flee from it.
You see a dirty magazine on a coffee table? Run.
Throw it on the
So you're gonna
ground
say,
and you
"Fight
get
against
run
out of there."
sexual Shut the door. Shut the door. Throw away the key. Why?
Lock
A door
yourself
that
in
you
your
left
room
open.
to avoid masturbation.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's so quiet in here.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage you if you're vulnerable, to be honest about how and when you're vulnerable.
Mornings,
Because
sometimes in
you're
the
only
afternoon,
strong- honest.
before I go to bed.
The guy. He was
lunch.
honest enough to
At lunch.
start.
When I see the construction
The
crews
first
working.
thing he said,
When I
made
kill a bug.
covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. Back in the old days, it was really good when you say stuff and it wasn't online forever. I'm just going to take
Accountability.
this surprises a lot of people, and it will shock some of you.
Oh boy, here we
Long
go.
before I was a pastor, I used to be a man. As a little joke, hashtag sarcasm, okay? I'm still a man.
He's down with the
sarcasm.
young
Yeah,
people.
he's down with it.
There was a time, Amy would remember this. I was in my
Maybe
early
you remember when I
30s,
was a man.
and we had our first kind of home. How many of you are old enough to remember AOL? Raise your hands. Online, type in the comment section. I remember.
Never heard of it.
AOL. Just type that.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't bad. That was pretty good.
Pretty good effort.
He just didn't do the high-pitched squeak.
All
Yeah.
sorts of we were sitting there side by side, and we clicked on the email, and it took us to a pornographic site.
And that was the fourth time.
I remember sitting there
was the
right by. I
fourth
mean,
time.
we're like trying to turn it off and pull the plug out and kill the noise, whatever it was. If I could be vulnerable, then I probably want to close that door. And so I
So
went
he
to
took a
work
baseball
talking to
bat to
people
that
were
new
starting
computer.
out with us, and what do we do
Did
now?
like an
Close the
office
door.
space on it.
And I
Did you ever
very
see
quickly found
the
some software
Kirk
that you
Cameron
could put in
movie where he was a
computer that would
firefighter?
block
He takes a
every
baseball
line.
bat to his
So
home
I
computer
did that.
Because
in one of the
porn?
And
scenes.
then as
It's
technology
implied
evolved,
heavily.
so-
Back up in your ass with the resurrection. Is the group
And so now I just have everything as locked down as it possibly can be. Amy has access to all my texts, all my emails, my
Every
whole
time I
office
unzip my
team. They can
pants, I
see
have to ask her
everything,
permission.
kind of embarrassing.
She gets a
I don't know
notification?
whatever.
She gets a notification to her
Text
Apple
my
Watch.
emails. If you text me something personal, they can actually see it.
You better be peen. What was the name of that senator or representative who, if you do open up a bad site, it tells your accountability partner?
Oh, I
And he
remember
chose
one of
his
those, yeah.
son?
Do whatever it takes, whatever it takes,
Whatever it takes.
Whatever.
You gotta
Whatever
take
it
some
takes.
For as long as you
I'd
need to
rather
do it.
have been
5
up
whole
divorce.
minutes.
Somewhere along the way, most of you at some point, Satan robbed you of your innocence. I don't know your story, but at some version of this, you probably saw something you shouldn't see. You maybe touched something you shouldn't touch.
I think Satan gets a
Read
lot
something
of
you
blame
shouldn't
for
have
human
read.
shit.
Tragically, some of you were touched by someone in an inappropriate way, or someone pushed you sexually when you were young and dating them. Along
That's
the way,
rape.
Most of us
he's talking about rape.
like a
Yeah, I don't like
sexual wound.
Equivocating that to, yeah.
Child molestation
And it gave
and
us a
rape
distorted view
and
of
just
God's gift of
masturbating.
Yeah.
sexuality.
And now we've just lumped
So
that all
now,
together.
because we've been wounded, whenever something triggers us, we do whatever.
This is one of those things where it's like, okay,
Remind
yeah, you
yourself
can have
that
actual
sex
damage coming from the pulpit.
is a
When you're
gift
telling people that
between
there's something
and
about
one
themselves
woman
that they need to
in the
need
covenant
to make right
of
because of something
marriage.
that happened to them.
And
Yeah.
every gift from God has a corresponding counterfeit. Sexual lust is a counterfeit to the gift of lovemaking in the covenant of marriage, because you are made to crave love and you desire intimacy and you long to belong. What are you doing? You're searching for love. Don't settle for lust. It
So
will
close to the
only
truth.
leave
You know,
hurting
it's so
and
close
wanting
to
for more. Some
offering
of you are
healthy
you're
relationships,
trying to fight your
saying
way out.
better than
Yeah.
unhealthy
So I'll show you from
relationships.
research, the first week without porn, your dopamine is going to take a nosedive.
I also don't want to make it sound like
Then,
porn addiction's
1 to
a
3
real
weeks
thing.
without
Totally
porn,
real thing.
Absolutely,
your
right?
motivation
You can
is
absolutely have
dopamine
unhealthy
high,
sexual
and you have
habits.
Yes.
Little to no
Yeah.
sexual urges
There
if you're
is
married because
so
you've
many
only been
issues in the
aroused by
porn
something illegitimate
industry
and sinful.
as far
Then
as
what happens is
what type
4 to
of
8
backgrounds
weeks
most
without porn,
performers
you're
come
probably gonna
from,
experience
the
emotions,
exploitation
your
factor,
energy's
who's
high,
making the actual
followed
money
by
in the industry. There's
sluggishness
all these
and
things that,
depression,
like,
because
it's not like you can
sudden
say
burst
all
of
porn is
temptation.
great
This is
as a
where
response.
relapse-
But I've always
don't
found it
give
really
in
interesting,
to
like the
a
elevation,
relapse. There's
just
a
looking at
provision for it, but
something
if you do it
to
Yeah,
keep
yeah, yeah.
going.
Yeah, which is what I
On 3
appreciate about
months,
OnlyFans. The
one
content
and done,
creation
you're
is
better by
their
Tuesday.
own.
Yeah.
This is
They're doing
you
it.
owning
It's not
your
perfect.
mind. Your sex drive starts to return
There's a guy
to
in the
normal.
audience right now, like
Your
3
spiritual
months.
confidence soars because your relational intimacy grows. You can look at your spouse if you're married, and you can say, "I love you" with integrity.
Whoa.
And you can want each other in an intimate
You
way
can't actually love each other with integrity
and you
if
feel-
Either one of you is looking
looked
at
a
porn.
couple of
Interesting.
boobs.
And somebody can clap right there because that's really good news. And
Applaud.
feel my
Applaud.
heart.
Please clap.
Please
And that's
clap.
why
Please
Paul
clap.
told
Thank
us
you,
in
Jeb
Romans
Bush.
12:2. Would you agree that lust is normal in this world? Sex before marriage is normal in this world. Sex outside of marriage is normal. Funky sex is normal. Do not be like that.
Funky sex.
You don't want
Funky
normal.
sex.
Funky
Normal is
sex
divorce.
is normal.
Normal is broken.
Pastor,
Like,
let's-
wait,
Normal
what
is
do you,
guilt.
what do you mean
Normal
by
is shame.
funky
You gotta be
sex?
I wanna hear more
different
about
from
this
world.
funky
You want something
sex.
better. Do
Like
not
a cheese
conform
funk?
to-
Or the skeleton in his
third
closet.
thing
He's
is the
looking
part
around.
that's really, really fun. Don't just
Funky
flee
sex.
How did he know my search
a
history?
life, but you're filling your life so full of Jesus and the presence of God and the Word of God.
Yeah,
and
you
the
got a thought?
power of
You
God
got
and
something?
the calling of
Emptying
this
something
world
out.
That's been holding you, because there is nothing more risky, exciting, or
Ooh.
thrilling
Where are we
than
going?
living daily
Oh,
for
that's
Jesus.
not as-
I
Living
think-
for
Not where I
Jesus.
thought
You
that
know
was
what
going.
Yeah.
happens is you
I
give to
do like
someone,
that so much
and then
advice
when
from the
you're a
pulpit
witness,
is
you-
like,
sometimes you get
if you're
persecuted,
struggling,
and then
actually
sometimes
struggling with this
people make
thing,
fun of you,
don't
and
think
that may be
about it
difficult,
and
but
think
you
about
don't
this
be
other
so
thing.
bad.
It's like what a lot of
And
it
you keep
boils down
believing,
to.
and you
Just
have
dissociate
spirit and
from
not by
whatever's
the
going on in
flesh,
your
and
life.
That's risky and that's exciting and that's thrilling. But you're getting so full of Jesus, you don't even have room
Once again,
for lust.
fill me up,
The
Jesus.
very first thing he said, this righteous, godly man, because he said, I predecided, I made a covenant.
You didn't say I predecided. You said
And
that.
then even though
You
he
said
was living a
that.
righteous life, and the good news is God restored all he'd lost and more.
All those sons
Whatever
that
the
died
devil
gave
has
him more
taken
sons,
from
new
you,
sons,
God
better
wants to
sons.
left unchecked. What could your sexual sin cost you?
Big note to end on.
Be honest.
Be honest.
Be honest.
Y'all don't want that chlamydia. I feel like that. He was hinting at that.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
Yeah, this is what can it cost you?
Man, lots to unpack there.
Funky sex. That's
Funky
the thing that's going to
sex.
stick with me. Funky sex.
Funky sex.
Yeah. Two words that I haven't heard together,
Do you think he meant?
and I don't know what they mean when they're together.
you think he meant anal?
He might have meant.
I meant anal. One, I mentioned this earlier. The exploitability of sexuality.
Yeah.
Right. It's such a deeply connected part. It's the most pleasurable our bodies can feel. It's something deeply connected to how we view ourselves as valuable. We want to be valuable mates, and partners to people. We want people to find us attractive, that kind of thing. To skate so close to the truth, because obviously there is healthy sexuality and unhealthy sexuality. There are ways to humanize the people you're sexually attracted to, and there's ways to dehumanize them and to use them, abuse them, that kind of thing. So obviously there is a morality that we want to see associated with this. What happens is the exploitation of the mental aspect.
Yeah, yeah,
Because we
it's
need
like-
you trapped in this cycle
Yeah.
of needing the church. We need
Yeah.
you trapped in this cycle of feeling bad and needing redemption.
Yeah, and
coming
every
back.
time you feel bad, there's like a whole to do about it.
Right. And so really the only specific example he kind of brought up was seeing guys at the gym. And I'm sort of assuming he's coming from a heterosexual perspective here. Seeing guys at the gym or women in yoga pants. Like those were his two big
Yeah. Those are his big examples.
those were his big examples of temptation. And I think that's charming in its own way. Our attractions that just come about very naturally, to put an additional emotional baggage on top of that is just one of those harmful things that keeps people feeling terrible about themselves.
It's like adding an additional like emotional transaction to
Mm.
every other emotional and like mental transaction that's already happening in our lives. The 3% credit card fee, or like withdrawal fee. And it's like, that's so much of what being in church was like. Oh man, like I thought about this thing. Oh, that's going to take up like 10 minutes of my day now because
Yeah.
now I have to like go through this whole rigmarole to be better and I need to go to church. I need to think about it again.
I mean, the biggest thing for me growing up and being certainly wasn't asexual, it was a fairly normal sexual. Who am I trying to convince? I mean, growing up in the Christian
funky
church.
sex.
Yeah, right. Growing up in the Christian church, having what felt like a sort of normal sexuality, the idea of a God having front row seats to every thought that I had.
Yeah.
Right. And just the weird ways you would kind of contort. So I would contort my brain in these narratives to think sexual thoughts, but it wasn't my fault or something else was going. And that contortion was much more damaging than just
Yes.
finding someone attractive.
Yeah.
Way more.
Sounds
Just
like
more
we've
of
got
it.
more to unpack
More of the same.
in a podcast or something.
Yeah. And if you feel so led, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and turn on notifications. Give us a like, leave a comment below. If the Spirit leads you, maybe follow us on all social medias. Join our Patreon. Be part of this community. We want you in this community so bad. We want you to join.